As you can see, I'm using this simple tool to carefully shave the bamboo down. It takes patience, but the result is worth it. Good morning, everyone. We're just finishing up tying these bamboo poles together for the new porch roof. It's a beautiful day out here.
Good morning from the village. The air is fresh and the sound of these bamboo chimes always brings me peace. Look at the little animals spinning around. Do you like the sound of the chimes?
In the small wooden house, morning sunlight slipped through the narrow gaps of the door, gently falling onto the bamboo cradle placed near the window. Baby Truc Lam lay there with wide-open eyes, gazing at the empty space above. There were no toys, no colors, no special sounds, just a quiet, still emptiness. Yet the baby's eyes remained focused, as if waiting for something that had not yet appeared. Trieu Duong sat nearby, quietly observing. He said nothing, simply watching his child for a long moment. In that instant, he realized how small the baby's world was, limited to the cradle and whatever could be seen from it. And that thought stayed with him. There was no need for anything complicated or expensive, just something gentle and close enough for the child to feel. A simple idea slowly formed in his mind, to create something for his child with his own hands. After leaving his seat, Trieu Duong stepped outside into the yard, where tall bamboo trees stood behind the house. A gentle breeze passed through, causing the bamboo stalks to touch each other, creating familiar sounds. He stood there for a moment, listening. The sound was not loud or sharp like music, but it carried a unique sense of calm. It was a sound he had known since childhood, closely tied to life in the mountains. In that moment, an idea became clearer. There was no need to search far. What he needed was already right in front of him. Bamboo was not just a material, it carried a sense of simplicity and nature. He began to think about making a small wind chime, something that could move and create soft sounds for his child. Something simple, yet enough to fill the empty space above the cradle. Trieu Duong selected pieces of bamboo that were neither too thick nor too thin. He brought them to the porch and sat on a familiar wooden chair. The morning light was still soft, enough for him to see every detail clearly. He began carving each piece carefully, removing rough edges and smoothing the surface. Every movement was slow and intentional. He did not rush, nor did he do it carelessly. This was not just a task. It was something he was making for his child. Occasionally, he paused and glanced inside the house, where baby Truc Lam lay in the cradle. Everything happened in quiet stillness, accompanied only by the sound of the knife against bamboo and the soft breeze outside. In that moment, the work felt light. There was no pressure, no urgency, just a father giving his time to create something small yet meaningful. After preparing the bamboo pieces, Trieu Duong began assembling them. He tied them together with thin strings, arranging them so they could gently touch when moving. He lightly tapped them to test the sound. A soft tone emerged, barely audible in the quiet space. He paused and listened carefully. Then he adjusted the positions of the bamboo pieces and tried again. Each small change created a subtle difference. He wasn't searching for perfection, just a sound gentle enough not to startle his child. After several attempts, he stopped. This time, the sound felt natural, soft, and balanced. He didn't say anything, only nodded slightly. Sometimes, the simplest things require the most attention to achieve the right balance. The wind chime gradually came together in Trieu Duong's hands. There were no intricate details, no bright colors, just simple bamboo pieces tied together with a sturdy string. He lifted it up and gently turned it to observe. Under the midday light, the natural grain of the bamboo became visible. He touched it lightly, feeling the smooth surface after careful carving. It was not a perfect object, but it was strong and beautiful in its own way. He didn't need it to resemble anything else. What mattered was that it was made by his own hands, especially for his child. He looked at the wind chime for a moment longer, then smiled softly. It was a quiet smile, filled with a sense of contentment. Not because of the result itself, but because he had completed something small that he truly wanted to do for his child. After finishing it, Trieu Duong brought the wind chime inside the house. He stood beside the bamboo cradle, observing carefully to find the right spot. Not too high, not too low, just within the baby's line of sight. He tied the string securely to a wooden beam above and gently let the wind chime hang down. The bamboo pieces lightly touched each other, producing a very soft sound. He didn't leave right away, but stayed to watch Truc Lam's reaction. The baby lay still, eyes open, not yet aware of the change. A gentle breeze entered through the window, causing the wind chime to move again. The sound echoed softly but clearly. Trieu Duong stepped back quietly, remaining silent. He didn't want to interrupt the moment. Some things take time to be noticed, and he was willing to wait. After a few gentle movements, the wind chime began to catch Truc Lam's attention. The baby's eyes slowly shifted upward, following the bamboo pieces as they swayed. There was no strong reaction, just a quiet sense of focus. But for Trieu Duong, that was enough. He stood at a distance, watching without making a sound. The baby did not understand what it was, but could sense the movement and sound. That is how a child begins to perceive the world. Simple things, yet enough to spark curiosity. The wind chime was no longer just an object. It became a connection between the baby and the surrounding space. Trieu Duong saw that and felt a sense of reassurance. There was no need for too much, only what was right and enough. It was a very small moment, but Trieu Duong did not miss it. As the wind chime gently moved again, Truc Lam showed a different reaction. The baby's lips twitched slightly, then formed a faint smile. It was not clear or long, but it was real. Trieu Duong stood still. He did not step closer or say anything. He simply watched. It was not a full smile, but it was a genuine response, a sign that the baby was sensing and reacting to the world. In that moment, everything he had done felt meaningful. No words were needed, no confirmation required. A small expression like that was enough for him to know he was doing the right thing. In the days that followed, the wind chime became a familiar part of the small house. Whenever the wind blew, the bamboo pieces would gently move, creating soft sounds that spread through the space. It was not loud, but enough to soften the quiet atmosphere. Truc Lam gradually became accustomed to its presence. Sometimes the baby followed it with his eyes. Other times he simply lay still and listened. Trieu Duong did not interfere or try to add anything more. He let everything happen naturally. Some things do not require much effort, only the right presence. The wind chime itself did not change, yet it helped create a warmer living space. And sometimes it is these small sounds that remain the longest in memory. One afternoon, sunlight streamed through the window, touching the gently moving wind chime. Truc Lam lay in the cradle, eyes still drawn to the familiar motion above. Trieu Duong stood behind, saying nothing. He looked at his child, then at the wind chime. In his mind, it was not just an object. It was the result of observation, patience, and the care he had for his child. He did not need to create something grand, only small things, done at the right time and in the right way. A bamboo wind chime, a soft sound, a child's gaze. Together they formed something simple, yet complete. And perhaps what mattered most was not the wind chime itself, but the way he chose to give his time and attention to his child each day.
Hello mọi người, hôm nay mình sẽ trình bày câu chuyện về Toàn, một người đàn ông sống với những ký ức đã mất. Khi anh dần dần xây dựng cuộc sống của mình thông qua những công việc thường nhật giản dị và sự chăm sóc thầm lặng của những người xung quanh. Dưới mắt theo dõi của một bà lão, Toàn đã bắt đầu thấy vững vàng trở lại. Dù câu hỏi về quá khứ vẫn tiếp tục làm anh trăn trở. Trung tâm của sự bối rối ấy là Tử Diễm, một cô gái trẻ tốt bụng và tận tâm, người mà sự ấm áp, gần gũi của cô khơi gợi những tia sáng le lói của những ký ức bị lãng quên. Mặc dù anh không thể nhớ mình đã yêu cô ấy như thế nào, nhưng sự hiện diện của cô mang lại cho sự an ủi, hy vọng và khát khao lớn lao, muốn tìm lại cho con người mình trước đây. Qua công việc chung, những cuộc trò chuyện nhẹ nhàng, những khoảnh khắc bình dị tràn đầy ấm áp, Toàn nhận ra rằng sự chữa lành không phải là lúc nào cũng đến từ việc nhớ lại mọi thứ cùng một lúc, mà đến từ việc sống và yêu thương, tin tưởng những người luôn ở bên cạnh anh khi anh thấy lạc lõng nhất.